is the president of Creators Syndicate. Jack is going to talk about how to get syndicated and anything involved with syndication. But he also is, for all you people aspiring to be syndicated, he has offered to sit down one-on-one and talk with you briefly about your strip and take a look at your strips. He's going to be doing that after he speaks right here at this table. You can kind of form a line, take a number or whatever, and he'll talk to you guys during lunch and potentially afterwards somewhere for there are more people that want to do it. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jack.
Great, thank you, Bill. I want to talk about 3 things today. That's it, just 3. Pirates, porn, and death.
Start with porn.
Pirates. I like pirates. Let me be clear. I'm not talking about the ones in Somalia who hijack French cruise ships, the ones who steal music and then get sued by Metallica. But the proverbial pirate, the idea of being a pirate. I like the ones who fly the Jolly Roger, the black flag with the white skull and crossbones. Pirates are about forging your own way, about going against an oppressive regime. It's about taking a stand against something that is unjust. Pirates are about rebellion and justice and freedom. This is why I like pirates. And my company, Creators, was founded on that very premise. We wanted to forge our own path free from tyranny. We wanted to give cartoonists ownership of their characters and treat them fairly. We wanted to be different. We were pirates at our foundation and maintain that same cavalier attitude today. In my opinion, being a pirate is cool. Being a pirate allows me to come to seminars like this one. Being a pirate allows me to embrace the media revolution that is taking place. And being a pirate allows me and my crew of creators to do things our way without bureaucracy or politics. People in this room care about cartoons. So do I. You all burned some calories to get here, spent some money to listen to me and the other speakers. This alone shows that you're dedicated and that you too are a pirate, interested in forging your own path, and that alone is commendable. But it's 2012, and we're right in the middle of the media revolution. I don't want to overstate the importance of this time that we're living in, but words like revolution, cataclysmic shift, and transition are certainly appropriate. The newspaper industry will continue to be profitable for a number of years, but make no mistake, it is on a terminal decline. Accept it. The sooner you do, the quicker you will be able to forge ahead and figure this thing out. And change is hard for many people. Change brings about a sense of loss. The other night I was in Hollywood at a dinner. Anyone who knows Hollywood knows that finding a parking spot at 6:30 p.m. on a Wednesday is next to impossible. But I got lucky. I found a spot right in front of my restaurant. I made my way past the TMZ photographers and ate my meal. After dinner, I came back to the car, and it hit me. I had to leave my parking spot. All of a sudden, I got sad. I didn't want to leave the space. It was mine. I didn't want to give it up. It was right in front of the restaurant. It was perfect. That's the feeling I'm talking about. It's the irrational feeling of loss that comes with change. Rationally, I had no need for the parking spot anymore, but still, it was such a good spot. Similarly, those associated with newspapers or comic strips feel that same nostalgia. There's an emotional, romantic sentiment that surrounds newspapers. In the TV show Mad Men, actor John Hamm plays a fictional advertising executive in the 60s named Don Draper. When giving a pitch for an advertising campaign, he addresses this feeling of nostalgia, calling it, quote, delicate but potent. Draper informs his client that in Greek, nostalgia literally means pain from an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone. I know that 2012 is hard for some people, many people. I know that newspapers across the country are in bankruptcy. I know that the internet has revolutionized media and that the newspaper industry and the syndication business will never be the same. I know that might be hard for some to swallow because of the pain, the nostalgia it might cause. But let me be clear, there is certainly hope. When I was at Stanford getting my MBA, we spent a lot of time trying to estimate demand curves, find consumers that weren't currently being serviced, and essentially predict the future. To use a cliche, it was about thinking outside the box. We used to have these brown bag lunch seminars where deans and faculty would invite students to attend and encourage feedback on their curriculum. I remember one student asking the dean of academics why there were so many required classes in really hard quantitative subjects like statistics, economics, accounting, and finance. The dean said, in order to be able to think outside the box, you have to have a pretty good grasp on what's inside the box first. That said, before we get into the future and the hope that I'm talking about, let's take a look inside the box and what got us here today. I'm biased. I admit it. I'm tainted. Damaged goods. My biases aside, what my father, Rick Newcombe, did was truly amazing. He built a lasting company from scratch. This year, Creators is in its 25th year and experiencing its best year ever. Over the past quarter century, he built a company that has made over 25,000 syndication sales. He built a company that has employed hundreds of people and given hundreds of talented cartoonists and columnists the opportunity to build an audience. Creators is an amazing entrepreneurial success story. It's the American dream. But that's how the story ends. Let's go to the beginning. 1987. There are very few revolutionary events that have occurred in our industry, but one of them occurred in 1987. For over 100 years, cartoonists were slaves. These syndicates owned the characters and could fire the creator without reason and continue the comic strip with someone else. This was the norm. This was the status quo. Syndicates had all the power, and the cartoonists had none. It was a dark time. My father worked for Rupert Murdoch, running News America Syndicate, which was owned by News Corp. Unexpectedly, Murdoch sold the syndicate, and the talent complained. They complained that they felt like chattel. They complained that they had no rights. And most of all, they complained that they did not own the very characters they created. That was the kicker. Having the company that he was brought in to run be sold from underneath him, coupled with the empathy that he felt towards the talent, and fueled by his desire to create a company that fostered fairness and justice, my father flew his own pirate flag and decided to set sail. A few pirates like Johnny Hart and Mel Lazarus convinced him to embark on this journey. They decided that they were not going to take this oppression anymore and wanted to set sail to battle the status quo and take down the oppressive regime together. 25 years later, Creators is doing better than ever. Let's stay in 1987. The late, great Bill Keane, creator of The Family Circus, told my dad a story which reflected what we were up against at the time. During a contract negotiation, his syndicate hired another artist to do 6 weeks of Family Circus. The syndicate passed it around and nobody could tell the difference. When Bill would not sign the contract that they put in front of him, they threatened to replace him. Bill told my dad, "But that's my family." And he had to sign the contract. When Rick founded Creators, under the guiding notion of giving cartoonists ownership of their characters, he revolutionized the industry and freed the cartoonists. All the other syndicates could not compete. They had to give ownership back to the creators, all because of my father and a handful of pirates who changed the world. 1995. In 1995, Gary Larson, the genius creator of The Far Side, said that he only wanted to be with creators because of the way we treat our cartoonists. He said that we showed them respect and that we understood that we worked for cartoonists, not the other way around. Mel Lazarus is my boss. Adrian Rayside is my boss. Mason and Mick are my bosses. Patty Hart is my boss. I work for them. And Gary told us that that's exactly the type of syndicate he wanted representing The Far Side. I bring this up because it was a pivotal moment for creators in the comic strip world. Gary Larson is an icon, and he chose us out of everyone. We had made it. But then the waters got rough. 2007. Johnny Hart died. And within a week, his partner on Wizard of Id, Brent Parker, died. This is a very difficult time for creators because one of the founders, one of our own, had passed. In fact, while we were still grieving, the other syndicates smelled blood in the water. In one instance, in one syndicate, verbally told editors that VC and Wizarded were discontinuing. In another instance, a different syndicate actually sent a letter in writing. Our lawyers got involved, we fought back, they quickly retracted their statements. But we were not alone in this fight. Patty Hart stepped up. Mick Mastriani stepped up. Mason Mastriani stepped up. They took the torch, passed on by Johnny, and have carried it with pride. More rough waters. 2008, the Great Recession. When Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns went out of business in a matter of days, causing the global financial crisis, every single business across all industries was pummeled. Now, the internet was already causing problems for the newspaper industry before the crash. But what the recession did was force newspapers to take a look at their capital structure. I think that the mortgage crisis is actually a good analogy for the newspaper industry. Many newspapers had borrowed money when times were good, just like many Americans got mortgages on houses with little money down. Then with Craigslist eroding classified ad revenue and subscriptions declining, the newspapers could not pay back these loans, just like many Americans were not able to pay back their mortgages because they had either lost their job or the payment ballooned. As a result, you heard about all these bankruptcies of newspapers and all these foreclosures of Americans across the country. We read these stories about layoffs and buyouts and downsizing and all sorts of horrible words. It was a huge blow for the industry and the world. But let me remind you, there's hope. Porn. I want to talk about porn. Does anybody know the definition of porn? In 1964, the United States Supreme Court had to actually address this issue. Justice Potter Stewart was asked to describe his threshold test for pornography in the famous case Jacob Ellis versus Ohio. When asked how he knew what was pornographic and what wasn't, Justice Stewart famously said, "I know it when I see it." We are all in the entertainment business, and specifically comedy. Now, if someone asks me, what's funny, or how can I be funny? My answer is very similar to Justice Stewart's. I don't know, but I know it when I see it. And that's what I would like to tell you. Just keep making porn. Keep focusing on being funny. If you're successful at that, we will know it when we see it. And that's what makes this job so hard yet so much fun. There's no formula for success. I wish I could tell you how to always be funny, but I can't. And the reason why I can't is what makes this job so great. It's because it's art. I don't mean the drawing aspect of it specifically, that's part of it, but the art of entertaining. The art of creating something, the art of making someone laugh or think. The only way to get good at it, like anything, is to do it over and over and over again. There's no secret. It comes down to hard work and a dogged determination to succeed, combined with a thoughtfulness and a purposefulness that the work you are doing is important, because it is. In the movie Dead Poets Society, Robin Williams plays an unorthodox English teacher at a strict New England all-boys boarding school. On the first day of class, he instructs his students to open their poetry textbooks to the introduction. He then asks one of the students to read the introduction out loud to the rest of the class. The intro gives strict guidelines as to how poetry should be measured, understood, and judged. According to the introduction, one must evaluate, quote, how artfully has the objective of the poem been rendered and how important is that objective. Then you plot those 2 points along a graph and you can tell who is good at poetry and who is not. Robin Williams' character then instructs the boys to tear the introduction right out of the book because it's nonsense. And that's the message I want to give to you in your life. When doing something creative, there's no measure of success other than yourself. Poetry, comic strips, music, art, they're all the same in that they are an expression of the human spirit. They are a creative expression that cannot be measured or engineered. Success isn't measured by anything other than by the visceral response of the person consuming it. So tear up the introduction and judge your work for yourself. Now, I'm not saying don't take advice or feedback from people that you admire or who have been doing this for a lot longer than you have. Feedback is a gift. It's the breakfast of champions. Youth may have enthusiasm, but age has experience, and you can't teach experience. Along those lines, in order to get a better sense of the creative process, I like to pick the brains of all my cartoonists. I did this last summer when I flew to Michigan to spend the day with Dave Coverley. Dave is the creator of the comic strip Speed Bump. I asked Dave about his creative process, and he said that he goes upstairs to his studio, turns everything off, and he just sits and thinks. He said that it usually takes him a couple of hours, but he will just sit and think. Once an idea hits him, he says that it's not that difficult to draw, but that the hard part is coming up with the gags. And the proof is in the product. Read Speed Bump. There are no characters or background. So Dave essentially has to come up with something from scratch every day. But what makes Speed Bump so great is the quality is consistently stellar. And this is no accident. It's because Dave takes time at the beginning to be thoughtful and pours himself into the strip. And that's the most important thing. Pour yourself into your work. If you give everything you have, if you work as hard as you can, keep your nose to the grindstone, if you stay true to yourself and your craft, you'll have the satisfaction that comes with being successful. A couple of years ago, the movie Avatar came out. This was a big deal because it was directed by James Cameron and shot in 3D. Leading up to the film's launch, 60 Minutes did a piece on James Cameron. At one point, the reporter asked about the blue creatures in the film. Specifically, he asked Cameron, why give them tails? Cameron replied, because tails are cool. I love that answer. I love it because it says nothing, yet says everything. There is no rationale for giving them tails that he can explain. He's not making a statement about how chained we are to material possessions or promoting animal rights. He thinks, rather he knows, that tails are cool. So he wanted tails. This was his creation, his characters, his world. He knew that they should have tails. So he was going to give them tails. And there was no other explanation that he could possibly give. Cameron is a legend, but look at his passion. He held that conviction because he worked hard, put thought into every detail of his creation, and was not going to make any concessions. Try to have that same conviction in your creations. In addition to cartoonists, Creators has represented the biggest names in media, including Hillary Clinton, Ann Landers, Andy Borowitz, Tony Kornheiser, Ariana Huffington, Bill O'Reilly, John Stossel, and the great Hunter S. Thompson. All of these personalities are immensely popular, but in wildly different circles. But the big difference between columns and comic strips are that cartoon characters can live forever. Mickey Mouse is more popular now than when Walt Disney was alive. In fact, I was with my 2-year-old nephew Scott the other day. He was throwing a fit, and we did not know how to console him. After multiple failed attempts at communication, we waved the white flag, conceded defeat, and pulled out the iPad. We plugged him in, and all of his troubles slipped away. That's actually not true. We put on a random cartoon, and Scott continued to cry. I asked my sister why, and she, without hesitation, replied, "He wants Mickey." She quickly turned off the cartoon we had been showing and swapped it out for a cartoon starring Mickey. Scott immediately fell into a zombie-like trance, staring at the cartoon mouse. Walt Disney was born in 1901. My nephew Scott was born in 2010. Even though there's over a century between them, Walt is still influencing Scott. Even though there's no way for me to tell you how to be funny, I have 2 small pieces of advice. 1, do the repetitions. Every bad idea you throw away gets you 1 step closer to the good idea. Keep working every day. 2, keep it simple. Da Vinci said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And Shakespeare said, brevity is the soul of wit. Simple, clean, funny. Number 3, death. We're launching a new comic strip this spring called Hope and Death. Hope is the name of a 7-year-old orphan, and the personified death character is her unlikely best friend. That's not the hope that I promised you, but we'll get there in a minute. I bring this up because the death character, the Grim Reaper, has been used countless times in media, but especially in cartoons. Why is that? I think it's because we're scared to die. None of us know what's going to happen, and it scares the hell out of us. As a result, we do our best to assign some human qualities, some things that we know, to this nebulous topic that we don't totally understand. I think it's also because we know that life is far too short. When I was 25, I lost my best friend. I can't express to you how much pain that caused me. But what I can explain to you is the sense of mortality that it gave me, and the realization that life was way shorter than I thought it was, and that I too was going to die soon. And you know what? That notion is actually liberating. Knowing that we only have a few years here on this earth to do what it is that we want to do, to spend time with the people that we want to be around, to create an expression of the human spirit is powerful knowledge. Don't wait, do it now. So define success for yourself. Don't listen to me, don't let me or anyone else define it for you. For me, success is about building a company that will change the world, and that is where the hope is. In the past year, Creators has gone through some amazing changes and experienced unbelievable growth. We doubled our sales staff, literally. We now have more sales reps and people working on business development than ever before in the company's history. Disney approached us, saying that they were unhappy with their syndicate and wanted to move the legendary comic strips Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck to us. The Mir Group in London was so thrilled with the job that we were doing for them with our syndication of Andy Cap and our licensing deals, including the Andy Cap hot fries, that they decided to give us the entire North American licensing business. But I think the achievement that is most significant is the fact that we purchased their very own building and moved last month. The new office represents everything that has made Creators an entrepreneurial success over the years, as well as our commitment to innovation and the future. When designing the new space, we had two goals in mind: encourage creativity and foster collaboration. Our headquarters is located in the heart of Hermosa Beach, close to Hollywood and downtown Los Angeles, while providing a work environment that's less than a mile from the beach. We did this because we wanted to ensure that every member of the Creators team would love coming to work every day, because that is critical to our company's future success. In the business book, Good to Great, written by Jim Collins, the author says that great companies did not have great strategies, but instead had great people. He claimed it's about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. Ask any of our cartoonists, and I think they will proudly proclaim that we have the right people on our bus. We worked tirelessly with expert designers and architects to create the perfect space. Built in 1970, the building we purchased provides an exciting mix of old and new. This mix of old and new in the building is an important one at Creators and extends beyond the brick and mortar. We have established brands that have been around for a long time, like BC, Wizard of Id, Andy Cap, Archie, Mama, Heathcliff, Rugrats, Liberty Meadows, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. We have extremely great strips that we consider homegrown, since we've been working with the creator for the majority of their career, like The Other Coast, Speed Bump, One Big Happy, Rubes, Ballard Street, and Agnes. And we have some amazing new strips that are truly innovative, like The Dogs of Sea Kennel, The Barn, Scary Gary, Diamond Lil, and Doggy Doug. And more importantly, we have some incredibly innovative strategies and new platforms for our talent. In the past, talent would sign with us because we could get them as big an audience as possible and make them as much money as possible. That is still our task today. In the past, we used newspapers. In the future, we'll be using many different mediums. Same goal, just different outlets. When I was in business school, I took a class with a successful venture capitalist who gave advice to startups in Silicon Valley all the time. He said that his best piece of advice was to fail fast and cheap. What he meant was that you don't know what your strategy is going to be. In fact, nobody does. But you need to try a bunch of different things without spending a ton of money. Learn from your mistakes, and then keep improving. That's exactly what we're doing. We're launching an electronic publishing division, and our first ebook comes out this spring. If you're interested, you can go to thebarnebook.com for details. We've launched an entertainment division and are currently working with Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane's agent at William Morris to create TV shows and films based on our comic strips. In fact, not too long ago, the production company Reveille, who does The Office, purchased the rights to make the comic strip Scary Gary into a television show. We're launching a podcasting network because it's a disruptive technology. It's going to give talented people a platform to reach an audience, just like newspapers did. And most importantly, we're launching a brand new comedy website that's going to revolutionize comedy and give our brilliant cartoonists an opportunity to reach their fans and connect in a way that has never been done before. I love media, and I love technology. I feel like I was put here on this earth to face this revolution at this exact time. I really do. I want to change the world by building the biggest and best media company that gives the creators the best opportunity to reach the maximum number of people and make them as much money as possible. I only work with people who are crazy enough to want to do the same. People like Mel Lazarus, who helped found creators. People like Adrian Rayside and Nick Mastriani, who aren't afraid to push the envelope in their work. And people like Mason Mastriani, who isn't afraid to take over for a legendary cartoonist and flourish on his own merits. I know I'm crazy. Change the world? The hell's he talking about? I know, you're probably right, but I don't care. Because I only get a few years here, and I have to try. I have to go for it. This is my expression of the human spirit. I want to end with a quote from an ad campaign by Apple. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who think that they are crazy enough, to think that they can change the world, are the ones who do. Thank you. With that, I'll open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
What's the new address?
737 3rd Street, Hermosa Beach, California, 90254. It's on the website, I think, creators.com. That was an easy one. Mr. Rayside.
What did he say?
He said, how are you looking to get past security? Yes, sir.
Well, exactly, in your opinion, what is the best way to approach the syndicate if you have an idea?
Yeah, so the question is, what's the best way to approach the syndicate if you have an idea? Two things. One is just follow directions. So if the syndicate, I can't speak for everybody, but whatever our submission guidelines are, follow those. That's number one. Number two is be funny. And that's kind of what I talked about in my talk, but that's the most important thing. I can't tell you how many comics we see that are well drawn, but aren't funny. I can't recall a single comic strip that's been funny but not well drawn, or funny but not well drawn enough. It's all about being funny, and that's hard to do. When I get a submission, I know that most people put their best stuff on the top, so I go to the middle and just look at a random one as if I were opening a newspaper. So be funny, have good quality across the board. That's really the most important thing. It's hard to do, I know, but being funny is kind of your path to success, in my opinion. Yes, sir.
You opened up saying, newspapers were in decline, a little different than Sandra opinion. So if that's the case, where do you see the big avenues moving forward for cartoonists?
I don't know, and I don't pretend to know. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. I have some ideas, and I outlined some of those, and we have a lot of smart people who are working on this thing, and we're trying a lot of stuff. When I worked at a company called Wikia, which was founded by Jimmy Wales, the same guy who did Wikipedia. And I talked to the CEO there, who was like number 10 guy at eBay, or number 10 employee at eBay. So he had startup experience. And that's kind of what we're up against. It's sort of like a startup, because nobody knows what the chief revenue stream is going to be. And it's an apropos example, because he said it's like playing blackjack. And you have you're playing a little bit of money on 5 different hands. And you're going, and the second you think that you're going to get a blackjack, you have to be willing to go all in. So right now, we're just playing the hands. I have not seen that opportunity where we're going to go all in. But I think it's the future of cartoonists, I think, is brighter than ever, just because the barriers to entry are so low. I mean, I think 40 years ago there were 3 networks and Hanna-Barbera, and that was it. And it was, but now there are a lot more opportunities. And, you don't necessarily have to. I think creators is a good example of kind of having the industry clout to get meetings with people and reach out to people, but at the same time have a lot of personal attention and things like that. So I think we're in a good spot because we are nimble and being able to figure this thing out. But I don't have a good answer. Yes, sir.
When you receive a submission, what's the process it goes through?
The question is, when we receive a submission, what's the process it goes through? It goes to somebody, and they track it. They sort of timestamp it, and then it gets circulated to me and 2 other people or 3 other people, and we say yes or no. And if we say yes, then it gets routed to a group that consists of editors, sales people, operations folks, business development folks, sort of a broad range. And then if enough people say yes, give this a shot, then we talk about it. So there are a lot of hurdles, but it definitely gets read by at least 3 people. Every single submission gets read by at least 3 people. Yes, sir.
Hi. My question to you is earlier, the information about if you end up circulating within, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 different publications, which would be great, right? The bigger syndications like yourself will take notice of it and approach that individual. Is that pretty much how it's done, or is there more like if a guy gets 10 publications somewhere, is it good to write into creators and say, hey, this is what I'm doing? Just do the standard.
Yeah, no, I have 2 answers for that. I mean, candidly, if somebody picked up 50 papers and it's crap, I'm not going to pick it up. I'm sorry, I'm not. So I look for quality, because that will have staying power. But that said, if people do buy into it, that's a good thing. And the odds of somebody picking up 40 papers or 10 papers or whatever and it being poor quality is low, especially in this market. So it's not like, oh, well, they said yes, so we'll definitely say yes. It comes back to quality, and it comes back to being funny. Sorry to keep harping on this, but that's the rub. So. Yes, ma'am.
I know in the guidelines they say send so many dailies. What if you're just doing weeklies and you're not ready for dailies?
Don't submit. I mean, just candidly, I think if you're only, I mean, think about it. If somebody's doing a daily strip, so in a year they're doing 365, and you're doing 52. I mean, you have to, they have 315 or whatever that is, more repetitions than you do. So it's like going to the Olympics and saying, well, I swim once a week as opposed to swimming every day for 8 hours a day. The guy who swims 8 hours a day is probably going to win. So, I mean, unless you're just like a savant and you're totally gifted, then yeah, submit it. But I've just seen it's about repetition, it's about hard work. Dogs of Sea Kennel, those guys were hammering that thing out for 3 years before we went live. And like, if you look at it from day 1 to year 3, wild improvements. I mean, it's no accident. You do something over and over again, you get better at it. So, yes, sir.
On your guidelines, it says that it takes 4 to 6 weeks to receive a reply. What if it took like 5 months? Does that mean that was being considered?
No.
That means it's awesome.
Probably means we're moving to a new office building. or sitting on somebody's desk and they forgot about it. Yeah.
Where do you see the future of editorial cartooning, and do you think more of that's going to shift to animation, but then on the downside, animation takes a lot more effort,
Yeah.
less return? What do you see?
So is it questions about the future of editorial cartoons? Editorial cartoons are in a weird spot, and politics, are more popular than ever. So in that sense, it's like this huge market. On the other side, most editorial cartoonists are employed by a newspaper. They can't make a living off their editorial cartoon. There are only a handful, way less than comic strip cartoons. So you have this weird kind of mix of this market that's starved for content, but not a lot of jobs out there. So, I mean, animation, the problem with animation, like everybody knows, is that it's expensive to produce, it's expensive to serve if you're putting it online. It takes up a ton of room, and you don't make any money off of it. So, something that's expensive, it's like buying a new car, it depreciates in value as soon as you drive it off the lot. So, but animation is cool, and maybe that's sort of, if we can come up with a business model, maybe that's the way that political cartoons go. But there is a market for politics. I mean, look at all the cable channels. I mean, that's where it's going. So, I don't know, but there's kind of an imbalance there where I think there's a lot of opportunity. Yes, sir.
Other than funny, what are the top criteria for new comic strips? Are there things that are timely right now that have changed since maybe 5 years ago or even 20?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, yes and no. So, yes, it's different because pop culture, and that's what this is. Pop culture changes every day, every year. You look at the Grammys they were on a couple of weeks ago. I mean, the people who were nominated last year weren't nominated this year, and then you had Bruno Mars, whoever the hell he is up there, and I'm like, who is this guy? But it's like, it just, people are totally fickle when it comes to media and pop culture. So, no. But if it's quality stuff and it has staying power, then it'll stay around. We just took over Mickey and Donald. This strip has been around forever. I'm reading through this stuff, and I said to Annika, who's in our business development operations and sales team, who's sitting right next to me, I said, these strips are good. Like, they're high quality. Like, they are funny, they're well drawn, and there's a setup, creating a curiosity gap, and then a punchline, and boom, you're done. So, in that sense, there is a sense of staying power. But focus on being funny. The other thing is be different. Be yourself. I mean, I know I sound cliche, but like that, I mean, think about the people who you love and that you admire. As Picasso said, the great artists imitate, the bad artists imitate and the great artists steal. I mean, take a look at what you like. Like I loved Chad's example of taking the Garfield book and doing exactly what they did. I mean, that's the perfect example of this. You gotta, see what's working for other people, see what feels right to you, and then come up with something that's hopefully different, but more right for you than different. Don't try to be different just for the sake of being different, but if you can be, that's a plus. If we've never seen it before, it's a plus. Yes, sir.
How would you describe the benefit? We get a lot about self-syndication as opposed to what you're offering. Maybe you could just lightly touch on pros and cons there.
I deal with talent all the time. We have 200 writers and artists. So I deal with cartoonists and I deal with columnists like Amy Alcon. And I work for a syndicate, so I'm biased, but if I were a creative person, I would focus on being creative. I would not focus on anything else. Because I think that it's a zero-sum game. So you have this gas tank of energy, of stuff, and anything that you do over here, whether it's selling or anything, that depletes the gas tank a little bit. If you're trying to compete in media and this market and entertainment, you need a full gas tank. And so that's why I would probably hook up with a syndicate. That said, I don't want to name names, but I think Creators is wildly different than the other two major syndicates out there. Like wildly different. In a lot of ways, for a lot of the reasons that I said. I mean, you don't see any suits from the other syndicates here. I think that there's a reason for that. So I can speak for us, and I know what we're doing, and I know what's important to us, and it works for us. So I mean, we have the best and the brightest in the business working hand in hand all day, every day, thinking about your problems while you can just focus on being funny and being creative. I would love to work with that team. And I'm not BSing you. Like, it would be amazing. So. Yes, sir.
Considering the popularity of things like South Park, Happy Tree Friends, various web-based humor sites, would you look at and accept something that wasn't necessarily the standard family, newspaper-friendly sort of script? How far would you go towards something that's crude or violent, so long as it's funny?
Right. So the question is, with stuff like South Park and stuff that pushes the envelope, how open are we to the more edgy stuff? I'm not a newspaper guy. Like, my dad ran the newspaper in college. He was a beat reporter for UPI. I mean, just my grandfather was the general manager of the Chicago Sun-Times. Like, newspaper family through and through. I'm not. Like, I worked in finance. I went to business school. Like totally different. And when I got to Creators, Annika, who actually worked at the Denver Post and has a master's in journalism at Stanford, that's how we met. She's like, one day she brought up the Cheerios test to me, and I was like, what's the Cheerios test? And for those of you who don't know, which is probably everybody, but I didn't know, it's the parent is holding up the newspaper over the Cheerios, and the kid is reading the newspaper. So you can't have like the 8-year-old reading the F word or saying, blood or whatever over the Cheerios. That's the Cheerios test. So in newspapers, the Cheerios test still stands, and you got to be clean. And as much as I love, Mick and Dogs of Sea Kennel, I mean, he can tell you I'm on him all the time because it's stuff that I think is hilarious and that he thinks is hilarious. Unfortunately, the newspaper editors are just so skittish. They're not going to do anything. So for newspapers, no. The example that you gave is a good one, which is South Park. Unbelievably not politically correct, or unpolitically correct, whatever the proper term is. And so creative, so funny, so right on. That's why it's successful. It's not a shock value thing. South Park is good because those guys are so thoughtful and so good. And it's poorly drawn, but the content is so good. They are so funny in what they tackle that they're successful. So going back to what I said, if the content is good, we'll definitely take a look at it. Not in newspapers. And that goes back to the comedy site that we're launching. That is going to be, I think, the avenue for those types of things. Because online, you can do whatever you want. And with the goal of building, my goal is to build, as part of this media company, essentially build a network, build a large media company that gives talented people the outlet to build an audience and get them paid for it. Because that's, you can't pay a mortgage with Facebook likes.
That's a good quote.
Yes, sir.
That comedy site, is that a particular sort of genre? What's sort of can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I was waiting for that. Here's the thing, it's not ready. So we're making a Cinnabon and it's in the oven, or cinnamon roll and it's in the oven, and it's super doughy right now, so I don't want to pull it out. But What we saw was with United folding and Universal taking them over, then they make this website, gocomics.com, and I'm a technology junkie, and that website sucks. Like, it's awful, and it's so clunky, and the interface is terrible. It is terrible, and it bothers me. And so I said, well, now that's the destination for comic strips online. That's a joke. It's not fair to these guys. So I said, look, we got to do something different, and it's got to be a unique value proposition. And what we want to do is two things with the site. We want to make the interface cool and user-friendly, and not just take the comics pages and shove them online, because that obviously doesn't work. Nobody makes money online on comics. But we wanted to do it in a way that felt right, where the comic strip served the same purpose that it did in the newspaper, but on a laptop or on a computer. The other thing that we wanted to do was connect the creators of the strip with their fans in a way that has never been done before. I think things like Twitter and the availability of information has just totally changed kind of the concept of celebrity. And I think that all of our creators are celebrities to a selected group of fans, and we have to figure out a way to connect them. And then when they do, publish a book or do some sort of self-promotion, their fans will respond. So those are two guiding principles. And as soon as it's done, trust me, I'll talk about it as much. But it's just not done yet.
Is that different from the Cartoonist Studio website?
Fill me in on that, Cartoonist Studio. I know we're involved somehow, but I don't know specifics. Annika, you want to talk?
It's Peter Gurin's site.
Peter Gurin's site. We syndicate him. Yes.
It's similar. I don't know exactly what.
Yeah, I've seen. Okay, the Mars one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know specifics about that, and again, I can't. I like Peter, and we're working with them, and I think we offered a development deal to that guy Daniel Byer. That's a good strip. Long story short, that's a development comic. But we're, I don't know. I just know what we are doing, and it's pretty cool what we're doing. It's going to look great. Yes, sir.
Could you elaborate on the development contract?
Sure. So, in the past, we would get these big submissions, and then you'd have to say yes or no, and it's like, that's so stupid. Nobody can judge anything based on 6 weeks. So what we do is, if we like somebody, we'll sign them up for a development deal, and then you get about a year or 2 years or 3 years to get your repetitions in, and you get to post to our website. You can do it, you should do it 7 days a week, but you can do it as little as 3 days a week, no less than that. But it's about doing a cartoon every single day, getting those repetitions, seeing the comments, seeing it on the site, because it's a lot different when you think, oh, this is funny, and then you see it up there, and you're like, I'm kind of embarrassed by that, and then that happens, especially with guys just starting out. And then at the end of a 2 or 3 year cycle, we can say, okay, there hasn't been any improvement, so, and this is a chore for you, so we should probably not go. Or we can say, hey, this thing's awesome. So Hope and Death, the comic strip that I talked about, wow, like wild improvement in 2 years. Those guys are just unbelievably professional. They've made so many strides in the comic strip. This thing's launching in 2 months or something like that. It looks so great, so much better than when we first got it. And if we had launched it when we first got it, it would have stunk. So it's sort of a good, it's a win-win for both sides, both the cartoonists and us.
How many newspapers is it going to launch through?
Well, we're going to sell it to everybody, every major newspaper in the country and the world. So
I mean, when it launches, how many will you have set up? Do you know?
No. So we haven't even started selling it. So the way that it works is when we have a launch coming up, before the comic strip actually goes live, we contact every major newspaper editor and every major website editor. Domestically, we have a sales force, and in Canada, and then in the world with our international agents. It gets shown to every single decision maker who will pay money for content. Yes, sir. So hopefully that number's big.
The internet, one of the big challenges to get, has been for people to pay for what they're getting. And we're seeing more and more with the apps where they're try before you buy the app light and then they try and sell you. Do you know, are the trends good there, the people actually trying and then buying?
Yeah, so the question is about apps and, sorry sir, what's your name?
Mike.
Mike. And what Mike referred to was the try before you buy. It's also known as the freemium model, where they give it away for free and then they charge a premium. I wonder how that translates in sign language. It's met with some. I mean, I don't know the research specifically, but the thing about, I think that where we went wrong, we as a society and media, was we saw everything was going to free. So now you're competing with free, and as soon as you set the price to anything above. So just the way economics works is that if the price goes up, demand goes down a little bit, and if the price goes anything higher than zero right now with stuff like comic strips online, the demand goes to zero because they can just go get it somewhere else. So the idea was to give away something for free and then get them hooked and then get them in. And that's a you know it's a good strategy. But I think that what we want to be careful of is tricking people, because I think people are pretty savvy. The whole pop-unders and pop-ups and you know, product placement and all this stuff where it's like we're going to sneak an ad in there. I don't think it works. I think that if you're upfront with people, well, I mean, I know that the research says that product placement does work. So sorry, but it doesn't. For me, it doesn't feel genuine. And I think that. And as part of this site, kind of promoting our creators, the comedy site that I'm talking about, we want to marry the advertisements with the creators and be upfront with people. So I had a website in there, thebarnebook.com. When I first read the speech to a handful of people on my staff, I kind of threw it in there. And it was like not genuine. So when I did it today, I wanted to take my time and say, look, if you're interested, here's the website. If not, no big deal. And I think that if we take that mentality of if you like what you're reading, if you're entertained, if you like this, these are our sponsors, these are the advertisers, help support us. Or if you like this product, if you've liked what you've been reading, pay a couple bucks for the app. It helps us keep the lights on. It helps us employ smart people. If not, we understand, but let's go our separate ways. So I like the model, but I think we, as media companies, need to be more upfront with consumers, because I think they're smarter than a lot of people give them credit for.
I think it's interesting that I try an app, and to pay for one was like, I can't believe it. I mean,
right.
99 cents, and I struggle with that.
Right.
I mean, I'm so into everything should be free kind of thing. And mentally, it's just, that's going to cost me 99 cents. I mean, it's crazy, but that's why I'm reacting. And I think that's an interesting hurdle for us to get over.
Yeah.
That mentality.
Right. And I have a buddy who works at Amazon, and they spend a ton of time on this thing called conditioning the consumer. And the idea is that right now you're conditioned to pay zero when you have a laptop or any sort of computer screen in front of you. But if it's on a phone or a tablet, maybe you'll pay a little bit. So figuring out where we can get that is our task. That's why we're doing the electronic publishing, because we can actually charge for the convenience through the app, through the tablet, and hopefully that works. As opposed to charging for a website, I don't think that that's going to work. I mean, I think that's sort of been proven. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What's the impact of the ebook thing the way you're approaching it? Are you going to be able to pull your properties through, like Kindles and things like that? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the question is a broad question about the ebook. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Basically, I like to keep things simple, and just like I told you guys. And I think I looked at it and I said, look, we have these relationships with these talented writers and artists and we need to get them an audience and get them paid. Before we could sell the newspaper editors, we're still doing that, but now we need to do more. So you've already done this work. So let's package it up in a way that, again, and I go back to the design, where the interface is cool and it's a different experience and it feels right to the consumer as opposed to just throwing it out there. Package it in a way and then market it in a way where the fans love it and that people who are outside of the brand may or may not be familiar with it start to get into it. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but the comic strip that we're using is called The Barn. And it's in I don't know the client list, but it's in a fair number of papers. And it has two main characters. Rory is a sheep and Stan is a bull. And Rory's sort of an eternal optimist and Stan is not. And our big marketing campaign for the ebook is, are you a Rory or a Stan? We're going to do this online. We have the email list, so we're going to get all this out. And then we're going to do the pre-order thing, which is it's tried and true. It's a great idea. I highly recommend it. So that if you pre-order the book, you get something. Whether that's a signed copy or an original or something like that. So these are little easy things, to use a business school term, the low-hanging fruit that you can do. But it's about taking what you currently have, because we don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So let's repurpose the stuff that you've already done, that you've already done the work for, and see if we can get some more money out of it. That's why, like, you turn on TBS and you see Family Guy, Everybody Loves Raymond, Sex and the City. It's all in syndication. Yes, sir.
How many new strips do you take a year?
How many new strips do we take a year? Do we actually take to newspapers and syndicate?
Do you accept for syndication?
Well, for development...
Do you have a certain number?
No. It's all about the quality. And, if we got 10 good ones, we take on 10. If we got 0, then we take on 0. But I guess in the past, we've taken, 2 or 3 in development. And since I've been here, I've been here for 3 years. We launched 1 right at the beginning, essentially 1 a year. We launched Dogs of Sea Kennel about a year after that, and we're launching Hope and Death coming up this spring. So we actually launch 1 about once a year, and we take on 2 or 3 in development. And of those, some pan out and some don't. But it's all about quality. Yes, sir.
Is there any in the development phase? Is there kind of like a mentoring thing between?
Question is, when you're in the development phase, is there mentoring or feedback? There is. It's not consistent, but it's more like once every couple months you might get an email saying, this is what you're doing well, this is where you need to improve, and I like specific examples. So it's like this, this strip has too many words. I don't get this one, and 3 other people didn't, stuff like that. Or this one's great. Look at the simplicity. You use 3 words in the whole strip. I talk a lot about, you set up, you create a curiosity gap, and then you got to give the delivery and the punchline, and hopefully it's unexpected. That's what makes something funny. So little stuff like that, but it's not consistent. Yes, sir.
So you were saying that with the changes in the market, media and all this stuff that's happening in newspapers in a terminal sort of situation, what is creators' percentage going to be of income off of newspaper or daily strip billing versus the licensing, etc.? How much have you guys changed that sort of mixing business?
So the question is, what's the mix and percentage of our business from traditional syndication to non-traditional revenues, licensing, and other stuff? Well, right now the majority is syndication, and in the future that number is going to go down and the other stuff's going to go up, just based on where the newspaper industry is going and what we have.
Is it like 75-25 now? Is it going to turn into 30-70?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I know that the syndication numbers, even if they stood as they were, like that number is going to go down because hopefully these ideas work, and we can grow the pie. And yes, that will be a smaller percentage, but it might be the same. But so we just want to grow, and don't care where it comes from. Just give you guys a platform and get you paid for it. So I don't know what the percentages would be, but we're focused on it. Yes, sir.
What's the demand for a single panel? I mean, obviously comic strips have a wider, easier to fit in the paper level. What's the demand for like a single comic like Lee does or Gary Larson?
Right. So the single panel versus the strip question. It's all about real estate. I mean, you're talking like newspaper 101. Like if an editor, if he wants to get rid of a panel, he wants to replace it with a panel, or get rid of a strip, replace it with a strip. Is it more beneficial? I mean, Adrian Rayside busts his butt, and he does both, just to lower the bar and make it, that much easier, stack the odds in his favor so that he can be successful, so that he can, be read in a panel or be read in a strip. Rick DeTore does One Big Happy does the same thing. So in that sense, from a number standpoint, yeah, your percentages of success are going up. But there's not like, I don't think definitively you should do a strip or you should do a panel. I think you should do whatever you can do, whatever feels right, and whatever you can be proud of. Mr. Rayside. No, please do. The expert right there. All right. Any last questions? I know you guys are hungry and sick of listening to me. All right, last question.
On the consumption of the content, how often does it translate from the domestic market overseas?
Good question. Good question. The comic strip industry is so U.S. focused, and we're 330 million people, and the rest of the world is the other, 6.7 billion. So yeah, no, great question. They like traditional stuff. They like the Mickeys, the Donalds, the BCs, the Wizard of Biz, the stuff that's been around for a long time. They